So my name is Henry Anthony Punzi. I'm an Aviation Medical Examiner. I'm a senior AME doing first, second, and third class physicals. So what we're going to talk about today is flight instructor says, okay kid, go get your medical done. There's a few things that entails, and we'll talk about in this video. There are certain ways that we can give the information to the FAA, which is not going to affect our ability to fly. Let's say they do a discovery flight and then they have some lessons with their instructor and they say, well, go get a medical. And then what ends up happening is they call me and they say, I want an appointment. So then when we talk to the airmen, what we realize a lot of times is that they have no perception of what goes into getting the paperwork done to finally come and see me. So that's what we help them do on the phone, right? So what they have to do is they have to go to FAA.gov, they get on the FAA website, and then they go under airmen and then medical, and then that's where they fill out what's called the MedExpress form. Once you have an account made, right, and you answer all the questions, then you print out a page that has a number, and that number corresponds to you, and that's good for 30 days. So the FAA, obviously, their main concern is making sure that, obviously, for first class medical, that is the highest level of examination that we have for our pilots, and they want to make sure that the pilots are physically and mentally fit, right? They don't really know the pilots personally, they know through their paperwork. So what I tell my airmen is if we dot our I's and cross our T's, then we really shouldn't have any problems, right? We have to give them what they want, not any more, not any less. Under 40, it's once a year, and then between the ages of 35 and 40, you have an electrocardiogram done for those airmen, and then after the age of 40, it's once a year for the electrocardiogram. We also tell them to hydrate real well because they're going to have to give us a urine sample. One of the things that I tell my airmen is be cautious with exercising, so we want to make sure that there's no protein in the urine, and a lot of times when people exercise vigorously, you can get some protein in there. So we tell them, make sure that you don't exercise at least for 4 or 5 days before you come in. If they wear lenses or contacts, make sure they bring them with them. So that's what they do to prepare, plus the MedExpress form. The thing that I look for is when the patient comes in, make sure, you know, like any of my patients, I look to see how they're dressed and how they articulate, how they talk, how they sign, because those are things that kind of tell you kind of what state of mind that person is in. Then what we do is we do a physical examination. We look at ear, nose, throat, listen to the heart, abdomen, check their pulses, and then we do the vision examination. And then now for first-time applicants, there's a color vision examination that we also have to do, and that's computerized. So they want to make sure that the airman is able to kind of pick up all the nuances of the different colors in there. Because, you know, you got your red, and you got your green, and then you got your yellow, you got your terrain, you got your weather. So they want to make sure that those people are... Now, if you've had a physical before, then you're exempt from having to do that special color examination. There's certain things that are kind of tough, and what I'm seeing a lot now in younger kids, right, that at one time or another they're diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, they maybe were depressed at one time and took antidepressants, and then that they can still get their ticket, but it just goes through a different route, right? So for those individual patients, what I have to do is do their physical examination. If they otherwise qualify for their first class medical, I have to defer. And then what we do is we have to wait for the FAA to ask us questions and then respond to those. But what I typically tell my airmen, since we already know kind of what the questions are, so then we gather that data before they come in, and once they do come in, I can submit it at the same time. And what that does, it helps advance the process. So then there's a neuropsychological evaluation that's done on those patients. And typically if they pass all that, then they typically get their certificate. So then if somebody's got diabetes, so the first time, right? Or somebody's had a previous heart attack or coronary heart disease. Somebody has sleep apnea. Somebody has a pacemaker or a defibrillator implanted. Those are things that would cause you to defer. The FAA is going to send you a letter or send the airman a letter, and it says, we want you to provide us with a letter from your doctor. They get the special issuance at the discretion of the FAA saying, even though you don't meet the criteria for first class, we're going to give you your first class certificate with a special issuance. Once they do a special issuance, then I can give them their certificate, but they've got to bring me the information. The mom or the dad comes in and says, look, my son was diagnosed with ADD, and I understand that's an issue with the FAA. What can we do? Okay, well, so what I want you to do is gather all the information from the doctors, when they started, when they prescribed, what they prescribed. Get that all information from me, and when you come in for the physical, then what we'll do is we'll defer him, and then I can submit that. So the FAA, until maybe a year and a half ago, everything was via paper or fax, and then they had to scan it in, right? So you call them and say, oh yeah, we got the fax 10 days ago, we just scanned it now. So now what we're doing is we're able to submit some paper via scanning directly with the medical that we submit that pertains to that particular individual. So that kind of accelerates the process a little bit. And it kind of shows the FAA that, hey, you know, this guy's really kind of on top of things, but it also helps expedite because then they have the paperwork that they need to make a decision. But what they have to do sometimes works with the HIMSS AME, right? So these are aviation medical examiners that specialize in either alcohol or drug or psychiatric issues. And then they're the ones that would take over from there to go through the whole process with the FAA. Okay, so that's kind of the way that works. You've never had a medical and you're going to go submit, and you've had a DUI, it's going to really depend on the time frame of it, right? But typically what they'll want to, typically for those, we have to defer. And what that means is that if they meet the standard for first class by your physical, then what you do is you defer the examination and you say the patient had a DUI in, let's say, 2020. So then what happens there is that we have to get the airman to get his driving record, if he lived in the state of Texas from then to now, because the driving record is going to say if anything happened or not, get the court records if available, and typically what they want to see is going to be the level of alcohol. Because sometimes if it's old enough, we can issue in the office, but typically they want us to defer. So establish a good rapport with your AME, right? With the AME, that's one thing. Get to know them well and just kind of, and I know a lot of them are really very enthusiastic about aviation. That's why they become an AME, right? And then, so they relate very well to the pilots. I think the other thing too is obviously try to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Third thing, make sure that you just parallel to that have your physical evaluation done. I know that between the ages of 25 and 35, no healthy young male is going to go to the doctor, right? So you want preventive maintenance. So what I say, it's better to prevent than have the cure. And I think that's the key for that. You've got to make sure that you do that. So if you do those things, and just, if there's a concern, you can always call them and say, hey, what do I need to do about this? And I think that's key, having that good communication, because a lot of times, you know, it's such a big bureaucratic hurdle that you have to go through whenever you say, well, it's just me against the FAA, you know, if I want to do something. But again, it's maneuverable. You can kind of get through that. Just make sure that you have a good ally in your AME. And like I say, we've been able to pretty much get all our airmen, even though they've got ADD, they've taken Ritalin, antidepressants, PTSD, we've gotten, I would say, 99% of them to get their medical, and that was a first-class medical. What I'm seeing right now for the ADHD is about 6 months. So that's between the time they come in and do the medical evaluation, and then they get the letter. We get the information that the letter wants to them, and then what happens sometimes is they may want more information, and once you do that, then you submit it to them, and then they get back, and then next thing you know is like they'll send. Typically what happens, they'll send an email to the airman with the medical certificate. And then all I have to do is download it and sign it, and then they're good to go. So I would say that what I've been seeing is about 6-7 months. I think the most have been 9 months. But the big thing I always tell them is not to get discouraged, because we could typically most of the time, if get the FAA all the information they need, and with that, then they'll be able to kind of get them issued. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative to all of you. If more information is needed, please go to the website faa.gov, and there you're going to have the information that you will need if you have certain questions with regards to your airman medical.